Your birth should not become your destiny, right? Let us begin our discussion with a simple illustration. Imagine a 100-meter running race. In a fair world, everyone stands at the 0-meter line. The starter pistol fires, the whistle blows, and whoever runs the fastest wins. Simple, right? But unfortunately, we do not live in such a world. In the real world, whether you are in New York, London, Tokyo, or New Delhi, this race is not so fair. Even before the race begins, some people are already standing at the 50-meter mark, while others are forced to start 20 meters behind the starting line. You have probably already guessed the race I am talking about. It is the race called social inequality. For decades, societies around the world have been trying to correct this through affirmative action in countries like America, social diversity quotas in Europe, and reservation systems in Asia. Attempts have continuously been made to remove this inequality. All these have been well intentioned efforts. But we must honestly admit one thing: the present systems have completely failed. Instead of solving inequality, they have become political battlefields. They have turned into political football games played by leaders to win elections and secure their vote banks. But the real problem remains exactly where it was, and is in fact growing worse day by day. The old method we are currently using has two major flaws that everyone can see, but nobody openly likes to talk about. First, it is extremely oversimplified and merely superficial. It assumes that if a person belongs to a particular social group or race, then that person must certainly be disadvantaged. But we all know that there are wealthy lower class families sending their children to luxurious private schools in London, just as there are poor upper class families whose children are literally starving. When a rich child uses benefits reserved for the poor, it becomes an act of stealing an opportunity from a truly needy child within that same community. Second, our political solutions become frozen over time. Once a law or policy is created, it becomes an unerasable line. The system never considers whether a community has genuinely progressed over the past few decades. It continues giving medicine to a patient who may already be healed, while the person dying beside him receives nothing. We must stop asking, which caste or race do you belong to? Instead, we must begin asking, what has your path of struggle been like? We must rise above politics and move toward fair opportunity. And this can be achieved not through political slogans, but through a transparent, AI-based fair system. To understand whether such a system can truly work, let us take the example of a country like India. India is perhaps the most suitable laboratory for this idea because India faces one of the most complex and deeply rooted systems of social stratification in the world. But India also has a huge advantage: the digital infrastructure required to implement such a system already exists there. For more than 70 years, India has operated a caste-based reservation system in government jobs and higher educational institutions. But the wealthy sections within oppressed communities themselves are taking most of the benefits, while the poorest citizens in remote villages still remain deprived. Yet for any politician, removing a community from the reservation list is almost equal to political suicide, and so the entire system has become stagnant. Now look at India's modern digital infrastructure. India has implemented biometric-based citizen identity systems. Everything from your mobile phone to your bank account is linked to that identity. Fully digitized educational records in schools and colleges are becoming common. A largely trackable digital payment system already exists, and there is also a massive income tax data network linked to citizen identities. In other words, the required data already exists. If a bank can study a person's digital footprint and decide within just 5 seconds whether that individual deserves a 50,000 loan, then why should we not use an AI-based algorithm to determine who most urgently needs a college seat or a job? Instead of a caste certificate, this fair system would calculate a continuously changing social status score. Think of it like a credit score, but instead of merely looking at birth records, it measures the actual obstacles a person had to overcome in life. In this system, I can judge the fairness of the race through at least four simple principles: path of struggle. If a person's parents have already used reservation benefits to obtain high level government positions or privileges, then that person's own score decreases. The family has already received the support it needed. Now it should step aside and make room for a first generation student from a remote village. Parents' background. If a person's parents are doctors or highly skilled professionals, that child is comparatively stronger. There will be a learning environment at home, proper guidance, and influential connections. But the child of illiterate parents begins life's race from behind. To compensate for that difference, AI gives additional points to such a child environment in which the person grew up. Did the child study in a luxurious school in South Mumbai or in a tin roof school in rural Bihar? Did the child have access to high speed internet or expensive coaching classes? If not, AI recognizes that the 80% mark scored by a village child may carry far more effort and value than the 95% scored by a city child who had every advantage. Historical burden. If the child's community was historically treated as untouchable or oppressed, that creates a deep psychological and social barrier. AI reserves additional points for such a background, but as decades pass and as the community's overall education and living standards improve, it gradually reduces those additional points. This is only a simplified explanation. A real AI-based fair system would be far more complex, but it is certainly not impossible. And this solution is not limited only to India. It can become a model for the entire world. The AI-based implementation of the system would remain largely the same everywhere. Only the data and priorities would change according to each country's conditions. If adapted to different countries, this model would naturally reshape itself according to local realities. In America, this AI-based system would move beyond race-based political conflicts. It would recognize the difference between a student educated in Manhattan's most expensive private schools and a student from a poor rural school in West Virginia or the Mississippi Delta. In Western Europe, the major issue is class division and immigrant conditions. This AI-based system would use regional and educational databases there. It would automatically compensate for the gap between students from elite institutions in Paris, London, or Madrid and students growing up in neglected industrial zones or immigrant colonies. But here comes the most important part, the surprising aha moment. This is the truth that can convince both supporters and opponents of reservation systems alike. Human driven or politically driven quota systems are like a continuously flowing water tap. Once turned on, political reasons ensure that they are never turned off. But this AI driven system is inherently a self dissolving system. As the algorithm successfully identifies deserving people, grants them priority scores, and brings them into the social mainstream, the incoming data itself begins to change. When the data starts showing that children from a particular region or community are graduating, earning, and becoming economically strong at the same rate as others, AI automatically stops giving them priority points. This change would require no new law in Parliament. No Supreme Court judgment would be necessary. No social protests or strikes would be needed. The system would peacefully end its own existence through its own success. Eventually, everyone's social status scores would converge toward the same level. When birth no longer determines your future, these priority scores would naturally fall to zero. Politicians would not need to abolish quotas, they would become mathematically irrelevant on their own. Conclusion. We already possess the data and we already possess AI technology capable of doing this. If we decide upon an AI based open source algorithm where there is no fear of secrecy, where the code is visible online to everyone, then transparent mathematics itself can perform the justice that politicians refuse to deliver. We must stop being a society obsessed with who our ancestors were and become a society focused on what our children can become. Let us stop fighting. And let us use this AI based fair system to provide support wherever true talent is born on this earth so that it may shine. Losing words. Just because I have said all this does not mean I am claiming that this AI based fair system is completely flawless. I too understand that it has many challenges. What if people systematically hide their data and attempt to cheat the algorithm? Or what if the very human writing the code injects personal biases into the system? These are all serious issues that certainly deserve careful thought. But my argument is simply this. The system currently standing before our eyes has become completely frozen and trapped in the mud of politics. Instead of endlessly clinging to it and fighting over it forever, we need to think about a new path. This AI based fast system may not be a perfect final solution, but it is certainly one of the best first steps we can take toward change. Come, let us stop fighting over old walls and begin discussing how to build a new foundation of justice for the children of the future.